Before we get into the episode, we would like to issue a content warning.
Due to the nature of this show, we will be discussing sensitive topics, which could include murder, violence, sexual assault, domestic abuse, animal abuse, elder abuse, alcohol, drugs, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, and more. Please take this into account when deciding when, where, and if to listen. Hello and welcome to Looking for a Man in His 30s, a Criminal Minds podcast. I'm Emma.
And I'm Sara, and today we'll be discussing Season 1, Episode 10, The Popular Kids, which first aired on November the 30th, 2005. But first,
I know that you've written stuff down in the chat section, and the only things I have to chat about are things that I can only discuss off the podcast. So I'm instead going to tell you, do you know November 30th, 2005 was Dougie Pointer's 18th birthday?
oh,
I think I know off the top of my head.
oh, that's cute. What was I doing November 30th, 2005? Let's see. I started college. I was resitting my GCSEs actually because I failed most of them the previous year. However, and I started my first job as well.
Oh, very nice. I was in year 10, so I was doing probably nothing apart from writing fan fiction and avoiding people.
Oh, beautiful.
I was a very emo 14-year-old.
I was, what was I doing at 16? Oh, going out drinking. Yeah. Our lives
We
are
lived
completely
wildly different lives before we met Sarah.
We did.
Every time you tell me about a story from when you were a teenager, I'm like, what the fuck? This sounds like an urban legend or something. It sounds like something people warn their children about. Or that, Loose Women is doing a segment on to scare parents that are home in the middle of the day. Do you know where your kids are? Are they at school? Are they drinking underneath the underpass?
Yes. Good times, good times.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wildly different lives as teenagers. Do you think we would have been friends had we met before we did?
no, yeah, I think you would have been friends more with my sister than me.
Maybe.
Because she was like the emo style. She didn't go out drinking per se. She'd go to like other people's houses. But
Mm. And also, your sister and I would have been in the same year.
that is a good point. Age-wise, we're a year apart, but school year we're like 2 years apart.
We're a year and 4 months apart, and don't you forget it. I am still only 34.
And I'm 35.
And providing I manage to edit these podcasts in time, that will still be our ages when the podcasts go up. Oh, maybe not by this one. This is episode 10. You might be 36 by the time this one goes live. Happy birthday, Sarah!
No!
Right.
Oh. Anyway, should we discuss my previous week?
Oh, yeah, sure. Your thing, rather than my thing, which is gradually alienating more and more people who listen to the podcasts and griping about the Parliamentary Labour Party. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know about you, but the unseasonably warm weather last week was a bit awkward.
It was awful. I went to London. I was like, oh my God, I feel so sick. I went on the coach as well, and I was like, no.
It's like, I know, like, in other countries, 25 degrees isn't classed as a heat wave, but over here we have what you call a humid heat. And it's disgusting and horrible, and you can't sleep.
Yes.
So
I actually think that I spend about half the year, I don't have a duvet on at all. I just like literally sleeping under a sheet. April to October.
Literally to about October, November, and then I turn my fan off and then put it away for storage. But yeah, other than that, I have been, my taxi service, my personal taxi service, has resumed for the next 2 weeks at least. So I'm running people to appointments, family members, other people. Do I get paid for it? No, I do not. But just a word of warning for you guys in the UK who live up north: never drive into Manchester during rush hour. I see it last week, and I have to do it this week as well. And I hate every second of it.
I thought you were going to be like, just a word of warning for anyone who lives in the north. I am also on the road, and I'm trying to ferry like 17 people to 12 different places, and I don't have time for you to not understand how the stop sign works.
Yeah, just kind of move out my way, please. Yeah, that was my week, pretty much.
Oh, okay, sorry. The problem is that Sarah and I did most of our griping before even starting the podcast. Before even hitting record, we actually had, I bitched about the stuff that I wasn't allowed to bitch about on the podcast. So my cousin might have joined a cult.
Oh, shit.
Yes. It's one of those, like, mega churches where they're, like, kind of like, I've seen, like, Fun Day Fridays explain them, where it's like, oh, yes, if you give your money to the church, it will come back to you tenfold. You know, it's basically like a Ponzi scheme, but they bring God into it. And I'm just worried. Like, and I'm not even very close to this person. And, like, I only saw it because someone showed me a clip of their social media, and I was like, that looks like a cult. And then I Googled it thinking it's probably not a cult. And then I was like, oh, that does say coercive control. That's not fantastic, is it? So, yeah, really on topic from me this week. I may have to utilize some of our resources in the What Would Penelope Garcia Do segment. Yeah, so apart from that, everything's good.
Crazy.
Shall we go on to the episode recap, Sarah, before I start ranting about Wes treating again?
We're back for the episode recap just after this short break. Back, and now on to Emma with the episode recap. So Emma, wheels up.
Wheels up. So we open on what looks to be my worst nightmare, jogging lightly through a forest. And I'm only partially joking. I would fall over a tree root and twist my ankle.
Yeah,
and I would probably do that to avoid the rest of the jog. Like, oh, no, I'm hurt. You'll have to leave me here by the car. Go on without me. I'll make my way back to the car bravely on my own. So, yeah, the girl is holding her side and, like, saying how much further, and the boy's like, oh, do you want to stop? Yeah, of course she does, dude. She's got a stitch. Who the hell is running while holding their side as if they don't want to stop? Like, it seems to me like you are not very well versed in running with people. If you've never been like, oh, that person is in pain, maybe we should stop.
No, I'm fine. I can do another 5K. It's okay.
I'm fine, don't worry. So anyway, she tells the boy, Adam, that he can go ahead while she rests, and she'll meet him at the point. I'm not sure if the point is just an agreed upon location or if it's one of those things where, you know, in the town it's just known as the point. It's not explained, it's not very relevant anyway. But worst decision ever, never split up in a forest. What are you doing? So this girl she's sitting alone on a tree stump, and there start to be like a lot of noises around her, breaking twigs, some animal noises, and the camera's following her in a way that you're like, oh, she's about to be murdered. She's shouting out, hello, is anyone there? Adam, don't try and scare me. And for the briefest of seconds, I think he's just going to come out from behind a tree as she peers around it. But no, she starts running again. The camera is literally following her in the way that slasher horror films follow victims. And I'm like, she is going to get hit in the back of the head any second now. But just as you're thinking, You're about to give up hope and you're like, no, she's dead. She suddenly makes it through the brush and into the clearing, and she sees sunlight, and you're like, oh, thank God, she's safe. Yeah, not for very long, as it turns out, because she rounds the corner, sees Adam unconscious on the floor, and scrambles down a hill bank to get to him. She's trying to wake him up, but he's got a massive head wound that he's bleeding quite heavily from. Then, all of a sudden, black boots walk onto the scene. The girl is looking up and she screams, no. And at that point, I think he's going to kill her. But cut to the next scene. And the police are there with the medical examiners, and they are kind of covering up Adam's body and being prepared to take it off to the morgue. We learn that the sheriff and probably his deputy, we learn from them that Adam was a quarterback and that his parents are in Nantucket for a holiday. So, worst thing to ever happen when you're on a holiday. You know, you're just having a nice beach vacation, and then suddenly you get a call. Oh, by the way, your son has died. Yes, it's quite graphic. And you're like, oh, this is fucking awful. One of the deputies yells over to Sheriff Bridges and says there's something you need to see. The sheriff goes over, makes his way through some overgrown plants, and they find a skeleton with a similar head wound to Adam. And all of a sudden, the crime scene techs have got to go over another scene. And it's not all that long before Sheriff Bridges moves one of the branches away, and he says, oh, we're going to need a lot more than the crime scene, folks. And this is actually one of my favourite tropes in television shows that focus on the emergency services. Just someone saying into their radio, yeah, send backup. And then just being like, oh, send everybody. Absolutely, just so dramatic. And I've embarrassingly folded this into my everyday life. Like, I was working at a shop about a decade ago, and we needed more help on the shop floor. It, of course, was just, there are customers here. It wasn't an emergency. And I'm like, oh yeah, send everybody. And yeah, I can't say that my colleagues enjoyed this part of my personality, mainly because they're like running out onto the shop floor, and it's like, oh, okay, you just need to someone to restock the shampoo, do you? Thanks. Glad I ran down the stairs for this. So, cut to the BAU headquarters in Quantico. Reed is pouring enough sugar into the coffee to essentially make it sugar with a spoonful of coffee. And his mug actually has Spencer Reed written on it, but like with a label maker. Did you catch that?
Yeah, it's so cute.
I only caught it on my second watch through, and I was like, wait a second. Are you telling me that he has a label maker and he's labeled his cup? Is he labeling other things? Like, does he just have like, this is my plate, this is my cup, this is my glass,
this is my laptop, this is my monitor?
I just imagine it would make it quite hard to clean, but what do I know?
If I was him, I'd live like it.
So when Morgan sees what Reed is doing, he teases him a little bit, says to lay off the sugar, and Reed's like, oh, I need something to wake me up, I've had a late night. Now, as someone who exclusively drinks black coffee with no sugar, I am thinking, wait, isn't it the caffeine that wakes you up, not the sugar? What? But anyway, maybe he's onto something. Morgan makes a joke about Reed having a late night in Morgan's head because, hey, you were with a girl. But I always think that Reed is bi because that is what the showrunners initially intended, and I need to force queer representation into this show because there is none. But Reed indicates, yeah, no, I wasn't having sex. clearly. And so Morgan teases him about what else it could be. Oh, were you reading an obscure textbook? Were you solving cold fusion, watching Star Trek and laughing at the physics mistakes? And Reed is like, doesn't even take on board that Morgan is teasing him. He's just like, actually, there weren't that many physics mistakes in Star Trek, considering how old it was. There are certain improbabilities, but not that many outright mistakes.
He has a point.
Yeah, you've watched a lot of Star Trek.
I do, because my mom's obsessed. So for the last 35 years, I've watched many episodes of many different seasons of the show.
I have genuinely, I don't think, ever watched a single episode.
One time my mom put this on.
I'm not that into sci-fi, I'll be honest. After that, Morgan just takes a sip of his coffee and walks off. And honestly, I have also inspired that in co-workers. Like, oh, she said something weird. Just going to drink something and walk away. But before Morgan can escape to his desk, Reed pulls him back because he wants to know if Morgan also has nightmares because of the stuff they see on a daily basis. And Morgan is trying to encourage Reed to go talk to Gideon about this, but Reed doesn't want to. And luckily or unluckily, depending on how you feel about Reed having nightmares, Elle comes in to drag them off to the briefing room for another case. We learn that the case is taking place in a small town in Virginia, McAllister. There's one fresh body and one skeleton. And there's no case file because the cops were waiting for them. They literally saw it and called the FBI straight in. Why the rush, you may think? Oh, just a satanic cult. Don't worry about it. The camera zooms in on a photo of the pentagram drawn in blood on a tree, and it has the text, Satan lives, LOD, beneath it. As we're on the jet, we get the Gideon quote. Sir Peter Ustinov said, unfortunately, a superabundance of dreams is paid for by a growing potential for nightmares. On the jet, Hotch tells JJ that they need to keep the satanic element of the crimes out of the media for as long as possible. Elle questions why, and Reed explains that it's because of the 1980s satanic panic. And boy, there's a whole rabbit hole to go down here. There is a future episode of Criminal Minds that delves into it more. Would you like a hint for that episode, like a teaser, Sarah?
Ooh.
Mr. Scratch.
That sounds like a cat name.
Oh, wouldn't it be a really funny episode of Criminal Minds if it was just like, oh, it's this murderer's Tabby.
That'd be Ginger Cat, wouldn't it?
Oh, hey, there is a cat there is not a cat murderer like murders cats. There will be plenty of them because apparently animal violence and violence against humans are very interconnected. But there is actually a cat murderer, and it's kind of like one of those kind of really witchy black cats. So just keep that in mind. You'll forget about it by the time we get to it. It's 10 years. So anyway, I did briefly summarize some things about the Satanic Panic, but this was just things that were from a podcast that I'd listened to over the weekend. So it was just about the McMartin preschool. So basically, it was all started by this one woman who said, yeah, I think my kid has been assaulted by one of the workers at the McMartin preschool, but doctors couldn't find any evidence to support this when she took the kid to the emergency room. Police investigations didn't turn up anything until police and family and therapists started leaning on kids to tell them what the adults wanted to hear. And it just spiraled from there. You don't need to ask leading questions to kids, especially because a lot of this, the Satanic Panic and the stuff raised in the McMartin preschool, it went from, hey, I'm worried my kid is being abused, to, yes, we flew around the world and went into this magical realm where we saw cats being sacrificed by the devil. And it's like, okay, so really you just leaned on children who are not yet able to determine fact from reality, and you just created your own moral panic.
Well,
That's only one segment of it, and I promise we'll get back to it. I mean, I think the Satanic Panic could honestly be a freaking podcast series in itself. But so we will get back to the Satanic Panic when they are brought up in Criminal Minds later. As Gideon says, most satanic crimes are actually just edgy teenagers spray painting pentagrams on buildings or doing drugs with their friends while they listen to rock music and metal music. There has never been a proven case of satanic ritual killing in the United States, Gideon says. And yes, I did read your notes, Sarah, so we'll come back to that bit later. Morgan says maybe there is now, as he looks at the photograph of the satanic tree. Then we get a beautiful transition where the camera goes towards the photo and suddenly we're all inside it and the team are coming down to investigate it. Meeting Sheriff Bridges, JJ introduces them and Bridges says, yeah, last year we got a memo saying any odd crimes call in the BAU. And this is weird enough, right? And everyone's like, yeah, this is certainly weird enough. Bridges says he doesn't know whether the hiker was a man or a woman because the body had decomposed and it was just a skeleton. Reed gives you a little bit of a biology lesson saying, actually, this is a man because of the way the pelvis was shaped. Obligatory sidebar where I tell you that everyone's genetic makeup and skeletons are slightly different. So people with uteruses may have narrower pelvises, and some people with testes may have wider pelvises. Also, I'd just like to point out, I know that Reed is saying man or woman because what he means is assigned male at birth and assigned female at birth, because, you know, you don't like to expose yourself to things that will make you upset as much as I do, Sarah. But there's a recurring trope of transphobes being shitty to trans people. And they go about it by saying like, oh, well, in 500 years when you're dead, an archaeologist digs up your skeleton. They're going to assume you're male or female based on your remains. And look, I don't want to speak for trans people here, but I'd say the major problem that trans people face and why they would like gender affirming care and for people to respect their pronouns and their identity, it's not because they're really, really concerned about what happens in 500 years' time when someone digs up their skeleton. It might just be like the here and now. So, and also, archaeologists tend to look at the items you're buried with to determine your gender. That's what they do for a lot of the old rulers that they dig up. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, they were buried with a soldier's tunic and dagger. Or this person was buried with, like, I don't know how you determine flowers, but like some sort of feminine perfume that was in this urn. That's how they determine it. And fuck transphobes. Anyway, back to the episode now that we've finished my obligatory bit. Basically what I'm saying is Reed is talking about sex, not gender, but I understand this is 2005 and a mainstream television show. Back to the crime. They find that there's candle wax melted at the bottom of the tree, which can sometimes be, candles are used in rituals quite a lot. Gideon shoots this down saying, yeah, they're also used on birthday cakes. I'm like, okay, Gideon, who do you think was out here next to the skeleton of a hiker having their birthday party.
Birthday to
Like,
skeleton.
that would be fucking strange enough.
Yeah.
But also, did you see the amount of wax there?
Yeah.
Was the candle the same size as like a dinner plate?
It's probably one of them massive Yankee candles.
Dude, I have like 15 Yankee candles. They're definitely bigger than that. Do you think that someone is like turning 101? Someone was like, brilliant, we'll get one candle for every year. And if we can find a cake big enough, we'll definitely have this party in the woods by the skeleton of that hiker.
Wow.
Yeah. And everyone's like, yeah, cool, thanks, RSVP. Reed also tells us that ancient Christians used to think that birthdays were a side of paganism, and cool. I am now really into the idea of celebrating my birthday just to piss off ancient Christians. Unfortunately, while I do appreciate Reed's interjections, and it's a very neurodiverse trait to continue on with the topic by saying the things you know about it, and I would just love to have him sit next to me in the library and tell me things, so I'm going like, oh wow. But they are on a case, and ancient Christian rituals aren't particularly relevant. So Bridges is just like looking at him like, what the hell kind of doctor are you? Oh. One of the deputies is talking to Hodge and billing them in. They're saying Adam from the start of the episode was like the star on the football team. He used to go running out here all the time. People knew him. People loved him. So Morgan asks if Adam was running out there today, and I don't get if the deputy is supposed to know that, like, oh, yeah, well, we saw him yesterday, so we know he was alive then, so he must have gone running today. Or if it's just like, maybe how decomposed was the body. Yeah. But anyway, it did seem a bit like he was trying to be like, maybe the deputy killed him and I can trick him really quick. Or, you know, does the deputy just keep track of where every local team is? Yeah. In which case I'd be like, yeah, that might be a bit worrying, actually. But the deputy's like, well, he was found in sweats, so I assume he was out here running. Morgan wonders if this was a crime of opportunity, someone just in the woods who tried to mug him, or someone who was lying in wait specifically for Adam. They throw the deputy off by the mention of the word unsub, because again, this is the first season, they have to explain these things, and having local law enforcement ask is just a kind of useful plot device. Elle comes over and they begin to debate whether or not this was a cult murder, and it's odd considering Adam is able to defend himself. You know, he's strong, he's athletic. Had he seen the attack coming, he would have fought back. And also, the murder weapon was just a giant fucking rock found on the scene. No one's really carrying a massive rock about in case they might want to kill someone. So it kind of points to disorganized. Morgan references the Manson murders at this point. Elle also says, but wait, if you were going to kill someone for a ritual sacrifice, why would you choose the well-traveled trails that all of the locals walk or run through? Like, that's not exactly the kind of secretive place where you've got time to really get into a ritual murder, is it? And, I mean, I've never tried to sacrifice anyone, but I have tried to walk down the road to Tesco and been stopped by just about everyone in my road who wants to know for some reason if you'd like to get into a really deep conversation with you, when all you said was, hey, how are you, as you walked past. Hey, you're just supposed to say good and let me continue to go and get my milk. I do not really care. I do not even know your last name. I just see you in the street. Hutch posits that you might blitz the victim in the clearing and then drag them to the ritual site, but they clearly haven't because Adam and the skeleton were found in two different places. So why didn't they move Adam? Back at the Satanic tree, Gideon is asking Reed if he knows what LOD means, and Spencer says, oh, I don't think it has any relation to Satanism, and I don't know about you, Sarah, But I was literally screaming at my laptop, Lord of Darkness. Like, I have put in my notes here that I don't know if this is correct. It's not, but Lord of Darkness is a very common thing linked to Satan. Like, you've heard this before, Sarah. I'm not insane. I'm not making stuff up, am I?
I recognise yeah. I don't know where I heard it from, but I have heard it before.
Yeah, I was like, am I insane? Did I just listen to too much goth music as a teenager? What's going on? JJ says she'll get Garcia to research all of this just as soon as she can get phone signal. But this is the early 2000s and they're in a rural location. And all rural locations had pretty shitty internet access up until about 5 years ago. Gideon just comes out with, are there any local cults in the area? In the same way that I ask people if there's a good vegetarian restaurant in town. And honestly, having actually asked that question to some people in rural America, the look on Sheriff Bridges' face is the same. Yeah. I may as well have been asking people, hey, do you know if there's a local cult around here? Anything with like soy burgers? Yeah. So Sheriff Bridges is there going, hey, no, my town is full of good, God-fearing folk. They take their kids to church on a Sunday. They just want a nice, quiet life and to raise their children. And none of them are capable of this. And I have to ask, okay then, so which areas do you think are capable of murder and satanic rituals? Is this just someone who came from out of state and was just like, excellent, now I'm here among the good God-fearing folk, I can murder someone, and then they'll just be like, nah, clearly none of my lot. Anyway, move on. Also, at this point, I had paused on the skeleton, and basically I was looking at the skull while recording these voice notes to myself. It's actually really fucking creepy, and I was like, I hate looking at bones. Why have I paused here? Thankfully, the team are going back to the road, hiking up a fairly short, steep embankment, and it makes it quite obvious to me that none of these people have spent much time in the country, because if you have, you know how to walk up a hill. You've got pretty defined calves. So Reed asks Hotch, Morgan, and Elle, who they've just met up with by the cop cars, have you ever heard of the initialism LOD? And all three of them say no. And I am shouting at the screen, Lord of Darkness, Satan. Thankfully, to distract me from this, which is obviously annoying my neighbours behind me, a woman comes up screaming at Bridges, asking whether Adam has been killed. And initially, he says, I can't make any comment. But this woman, clearly scared out of her mind, is saying, my daughter was running with Adam this morning. She's missing. And we find out there that the girl's name is Cherish. Bridges orders one of his deputies to take Cherish's mum home, which is sort of odd because I would be like, hey, do you need to take a statement? But whatever, I guess. The team begin with Gideon saying that the unsub had to be able to overpower Adam and kidnap Cherish without being seen. And Reed says that actually might sound more cultish than anything else. Also, not particularly relevant to the scene, but Reed has got a purple scarf that was initially just hanging around his neck, but he has swung over one shoulder so that he can look like a substitute art teacher. Hotch points out that if just one person, it could have been just one person, if he overpowered Adam, attacked him, killed him in a ferocious enough way, he could have abducted Cherish while she was still in shock and unable to fight back. Morgan and Elle say, this is some pretty rough country. We walked about a quarter of a mile and got lost. So the person who killed Adam must be around this area. They must know it. So Bridges is wrong about the fact that it can't be anyone in town. Bridges is setting up a search party to scour the area for Cherish, and Gideon suggests using volunteers from the local area. But it's not just because the locals are more likely to know the area and not get lost. It's not even the fact that people in a small town might feel more energized about finding someone they know. Turns out the team wants to profile the volunteers, see who's inserting themselves into the investigation, see who's being a bit weird. But Gideon doesn't want to tell Bridges this, in the same way that cops will put out an appeal looking for a witness when they're really looking for the criminal. It's because if your neighbours are like, oh, that looks like Sara, they'll be like, oh, Sara might have seen something, not Sara didn't stop at at the stoplight and crashed straight into another car. Bridges is initially reluctant to use volunteers in case they mess up the crime scene or get lost themselves and need rescuing, so they'll need a whole extra search team for them. But JJ assures him it'll be okay. I've done this a load of times. But honestly, in the series so far, this is the most logical thing I've ever heard a police officer say. I don't want to involve members of the public. They'll mess up the crime scene and just get lost. Exactly. JJ and Bridges are going to town to round up some volunteers. JJ is going to coordinate it, and Reed stumbles into the scene, literally falling over something, and says, hey, can I get a lift to the station? I'm going to ask Garcia about the LOD thing. I'm not going to say it this time. I'm not going to say it. But you know what I'm thinking. And we will come back after a short break. Hi, and welcome back to Looking for a Man in His 30s. We'll continue now with the episode recap. As they get to the station, Reverend Paul Burke is waiting outside, and Sheriff Bridges introduces JJ and Reed, although he has politely explained that he did forget their names. And honestly, he has a lot more on his plate than I do, and I forget the names of everyone in every single episode ever. So we'll give him a pass on that. The Reverend offers to help, and Bridge tells him about the search team and asks him to call the congregation, which is exactly what they wanted, and they're treating it as suspicious that someone local might want to help because someone in the community has gone missing. And I'd just like to say, I am like, hey guys, some people are generally just concerned, like they're genuinely concerned if someone they vaguely know has gone missing. There are people that I don't know very well in my street, but if the police were like, oh, hey, you know, Mike from number 22 has gone missing, I'd be like, oh no, not Mike. Don't know anything else about him, but I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll come help search. Like, you're so suspicious to these people who are just like, I'd like to help find the person in our community that's gone missing. And so I go on about that for quite a while in my notes, and then I go, oh wait, no, he looked back and he looked weird, like he was suspicious. In the police station, there's a big board up with the local, it's got a display of the local high school football team, even a football that might have been used in one of the games. And I'm like, I think that's a bit weird to have that massive display in the police station. Why do you not have that in the school? But anyway, Reed has immediately forgotten about his need to call Garcia and become entranced with the wall. He's even startled when some kid in a varsity jacket comes up to him and goes, do you ever play football? No, I'm sorry. Tell me what position you think this skinny, fragile man played in American football. Come on, kid, out with it. What position? Oh, really? You think that tall, skinny guys might not be exactly the right body type to do anything in American football? And when Reed's like, no, I didn't play football, which should have been fucking obvious, the kid says, oh, I probably wouldn't have either if it wasn't for my dad. We learn his name is Corey. He's reading Nietzsche, and Reed jokes that, hey, I don't know the philosopher's vibe is going to really jive with the church-going population of the town. And Corey takes a massive, unnecessarily harsh dig at the people of his town, saying most wouldn't have bothered to read it, and if they did, they wouldn't understand it. Like, okay, kid, calm down. How can you tell me you're edgy and you hate your town without telling me you're edgy and you hate your town? Reed and Corey bond over some joke about quark that I didn't get. I also wouldn't get Nietzsche either, so maybe I'm just as much of a hick as Corey clearly thinks everyone in the town is. Corey asks if his dad is free, and Reed says, oh yeah, I think he's in with the other agent, which tips Corey off to the fact that the FBI is in town. And one, what do you mean you're just talking to strangers at the police station, kid? Like, people at the police station are generally there because they're criminals, and you are a minor. You shouldn't be, like, engaging with a conversation with a potential criminal. Anyway, so Corey is honestly the first person in the series to have immediately been like, oh yeah, profilers, cool, I know what they are. I've actually got some questions. Let me just talk to you about profiling without expressing any skepticism about how it works or what it does or anything. What takes him a little bit longer is to ask, hey, why are the FBI here? Which would have been my first question. Yeah. Because this is a really small town. If the FBI are there, there's something big going on. So Spencer fills him in about the murder just outside of town and the missing girl. And the sheriff comes in to tell his son it's Cherish, who I imagine everyone knows because it's a small town, everyone knows everyone. The sheriff then tells his son, I need you to round up the football team to help out with the search. Cut to the search site. JJ, the sheriff, and the reverend are helping to direct people, get them to sign up on the list, and then assigning them a quadrant of the map that they'll be taking on. Elle says that she grew up in Brooklyn and you wouldn't get this many people out for anything less than free money, which, very funny. But also, I think we are underplaying the sense of community in cities. Like, if there was some missing girl and I didn't know her and she was still like a few streets away and they were like, oh, hey, we need to do a search of, you know, the local park, I'd be like, oh, yeah, of course, a missing girl, you know, fucking hell. Like, I think we underestimate the fact that even if cities do not have a close-knit feel like small towns do, where everyone's in everyone's business, people still do care when someone local has gone missing. The first of the volunteers spotted to be a bit weird is one of the girls who's with the cheerleaders and the football team. All of the other teenagers seem to be just kind of looking around for, you know, someone to tell them, hey, this is what you want to do. But she is like, she's got her arms crossed, she's fidgeting, she's looking nervous. Not like she's worried about, oh no, this girl I know from school is missing, but more like, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble. Gideon clocks this and he's like, oh yeah, I'll make a note of that. He grabs the sign-off sheets from JJ, who explains that she's going back to the station to fax all the names to Garcia so that Garcia can do background checks while the search is going on. The next scene cuts between Garcia at her desk, giving you the basic demographics of McAllister, and the ongoing search through the forest. It turns out that the Reverend is hiding a criminal conviction for embezzlement, which isn't quite first-degree murder, but he is looking at the back of Reed's head like he's picturing breaking it open with a stone. Garcia explains that a lot of the red flags popping up are things like extramarital affairs and tax avoidance/evasion, but she doesn't exactly think that's satanic cult-worthy. Although if you knew anything about cults, you'd probably know that they're not super good with looking after finances in a responsible and reasonable way. So maybe the tax evasion makes sense. I mean, churches are tax exempt, and what is a cult if not a very small church that people think is weird? Garcia finds another potential answer in Henry Dent, a man whose house is in foreclosure, probably due to his spotty work history, which I don't feel is super relevant to murder. Like, yeah, there's a link between poverty and crime, but it's not like, oh, you've lost your job and you're going to just randomly murder teens in the neighborhood. Although Dent was found guilty of assault with a deadly weapon, a baseball bat, you know, a blunt object, just like the one the teenager was killed with. So I still think it's a bit of a stretch. Or maybe just a bit rude to bring in the fact that his house is in foreclosure. Yeah. Cut to Elle in her grid square. She's being followed by Henry, who comes up behind her as she crouches down on the floor to tie up her boot. And he then reaches out to her and touches her on the shoulder to be like, "Are you okay?" Sorry, do you think she collapsed? She knelt down slowly. She wasn't like on the floor having some sort of medical issue. Why are you walking up behind her silently? Yeah. There are dry leaves all over the floor, and I didn't even hear them crack underneath your feet as you snuck up behind her. Yeah, and then he's like, "Yeah, I never have to tie up my shoes." And it sounds like a 5-year-old going, I have Velcro on my shoes. I don't need to do my shoes up. She introduces, this is the stupidest part. She introduces herself as Elle, and he's like the letter. I just want to let that sink in. Like, Elle is a fairly common female name. Yeah. And he's like the letter.
Because my brother's called Kay.
However, considering I take all of my notes speech to text, I can tell you that it always just puts the letter L when I'm talking about Elle. So, you know, maybe Henry's got, you know, maybe, oh no, I have a lot in common with Henry.
Oh, good.
Anyway, Henry keeps trying to engage her with more talk about her job, and he does seem a bit obsessed about whether or not she's ever had to shoot someone. And Elle is reacting really calmly, because I would have been like, sorry, what? I'm just going to keep my hand on my gun if you don't mind. Elle then stumbles upon a tree where there's a hand-drawn note. And I say drawn because it looks like a very specific type of calligraphy. It's got a lot of pentagrams on it. Honestly, it did look like a tissue. And I was like, what? But it did have lines, so it must have been a notebook. But I was like, oh my God. So the note reads specifically, Satan commands the virgin be sacrificed at the next full moon. And it looks like there's blood across the note. Henry, who for some reason still thinks it's okay to come straight up behind a woman and lean right into her, says, the next full moon is tonight. Don't. That's creepy. So we gather from this that Cherish only has hours to live. And then Henry also points at the red stain and very almost puts his fingers on it going, what's that? And she's like, it's blood. And he doesn't react at all. If I was searching for a missing girl and I'd found a note saying, oh, by the way, we're going to kill her at the next full moon and it had blood on it, I would not be like, ooh. I'd be like, oh, shit. And I literally started running. Back at the station, Reed is yawning and Hotch is trying to engage him to encourage Reed to talk about his nightmares, saying everyone gets nightmares occasionally, especially considering the job we do. Reed does not take this well at all, shoots Hotch down, and glares daggers at the back of Morgan's head. Oh my God. Luckily, before Morgan can turn around and face Reed, JJ comes into the room saying, we're ready to deliver a profile, despite the fact that I don't think I've seen anyone do any profile work all of this episode. Hotch begins by saying there's never been a murder linked to satanic ritual in the United States, although there have definitely been animal sacrifices. You get a transition shot where it cuts to a sort of quasi-satanic ritual where a goat is being led up to an altar, and I would be more excited about the transition shot if I didn't think they were about to murder that goat. Luckily, it moves on quite quickly to just some graffiti. There are young teenagers just spray painting pentagrams on the side of buildings, and I'll go on record as saying, yes, I'd much rather you did that than sacrificed a goat. Morgan says we don't want to completely write off the idea that someone could be making human sacrifices as a part of devil worship. And Reed explains that cults are no strangers to killing their worshippers, citing the specific case of Jim Jones and the People's Temple, who killed 4 people, including a US senator who had come to visit them and check on the worshippers. And following this, the group died from mass suicide, where they drank poison in Kool-Aid, which is where you get the term drinking the Kool-Aid, to refer to cult-like behavior. Now, you know I love transition shots, Sarah. It's like my thing, especially, but I did not like the one where it was like, okay, the background behind Reed is going to disappear, and instead it's going to be what looks like actual footage of the dead bodies at the People's Temple. Sorry, what? Why did you cut in with this? I would have believed you had you not put their dead bodies on screen. And then Reed goes on to talk about the Manson family, which do come up later this season as a true crime bit, Sarah. Reed explains that Manson directed his followers to kill groups of people in order to start a race war. So Elle then says that murderous cults all have in common a powerful, charismatic leader, and Reed says, but the people outside the cult are not going to think this guy is charming, they're going to think he's odd. Hotch then tells the waiting cops that satanic rituals are often linked with heavy metal music, and so the killers may dress like that. And as I've said before on this podcast, violence is not caused by metal music or black clothes. I feel like this is a reference to Columbine, where the killers, whose names I will not state, where basically there was a rumor that they were into heavy metal music and they dressed all in black, and that was what led them to kill many of their classmates. But it wasn't true. Like, maybe they did listen to Marilyn Manson, but it also meant that a lot of the alternative kids at their school got harassed in the town in the weeks afterwards. Like, hey, were you friends with those kids that shot up the school? No, we weren't. We're just like listening to metal music. Leave us alone. Morgan suggests that the group dynamic will lean heavily on kind of sex, drugs, alcohol. It will be led by an older male, which is odd because why is no one in this small, close-knit town noticing a guy in his mid-20s hanging around with high school students? Yeah. Like, come on, guys, you're in a small town, you know each other's business. Could you not be like, hey, that guy is 26, maybe he should stop hanging around with 17-year-olds? No, just too busy policing the metal music, are we? Cool. So the team says this is definitely a local person. The murders are being committed by someone local. And Sheriff Bridges is like, no, I know everyone in this town. You're not going to convince me that one is a murderer. And then Corey pops up like, hey, I know a weird antisocial person. The screen cuts to a man we later learn is called Mike Zizzo. He is driving a beat-up car, wearing a beanie and smoking a cigarette. He graduated 5 years ago, so he should not be hanging out with 16-year-olds. Even if you were going to ignore the power dynamics that are completely 100% there, it's still fucking loser behavior. Like, dude, find some kids your own age. You're 23 or 24. Stop hanging around with kids that aren't old enough to drive without a parent present. Yeah, so that is something that made me quite mad. Mike and his friends have been meeting up in an abandoned house, and honestly, the house looks just fine. But Corey solves the ongoing mystery of what is LOD. And I was wrong, it's embarrassing, it's Lords of Destruction. But come on, I was fairly close. Bridges asks his son how he knows all of this, and Corey's like, oh. And his dad's like, no, it's all right, tell me, you're not going to get in trouble. And he's like, yeah, I've been to the house where they hang out and get drunk and get high. Now, the location falls somewhat outside of Sheriff Bridges' jurisdiction, but the FBI can basically go wherever they want, so they get ready to crash a party. As they start getting into the cars, Gideon once again spots the teenage girl who was acting weird at the search and is attempting to hide in the shadows across the road, which I just found really weird. Like, you don't have to hide. They're not after you. Don't stand outside the police station and watch them. But anyway, Gideon's like, I'm not going to go on the raid. You guys go. You speak to Mike Zizzo. You don't need that many people. I'm going to go talk to this girl who's acting very weird. Back at the abandoned house, they are playing something which could generously be called music. That was harsh. But they are jumping up and down to some sort of mosh music. The house is not very well lit and there's graffiti all over the walls. It's like the opposite to the start of a metal video. First, they're jumping about and dancing, and then the feds come in.
Yeah.
While the rest of the teens look a bit scared about being busted by the FBI, Mike Zizzo is just standing there smiling about something, and I can't for the life of me figure out what it is. Because even if you're like, well, I know full well I didn't kill anyone, you are aware that it's still illegal to supply alcohol and drugs to minors, yes? That's still illegal. I don't get why you're so calm about the FBI. So, cut to the church. Gideon has followed the girl here, and she's asking him if he believes in God. And he says yes, and honestly, after all the shit he's seen, he must have a lot of a stronger faith than I do. She asks if he believes in the devil, but we don't get an answer right away because we cut to an interrogation room where Elle, Hotch and Sheriff Bridges are asking Mike Zizzo some questions. And, excuse me, Mike, if I could speak to you for just 1 second. I get the whole angry at the world thing. I get the whole, oh, who cares about the pretty blonde girl that's gone missing? What about all the people of colour that go missing and do not get enough media or police attention? But I feel like you might actually just be trying to be edgy. I get that you're saying, oh, I couldn't give a shit about this girl going missing, but that's not the wisest position to take when you are literally being interviewed about her disappearance by the police. You need to drop the attitude. This isn't some petty underage drinking or graffiti that you've been arrested for. A girl has been kidnapped and a boy has been murdered. Drop the fucking edgy attitude. They give him the note that was found by Elle, the one about the virgin sacrifice before the new moon, and he laughs at the idea of Cherish being a virgin, and it's like, okay, well, even if she's not, you're being very blasé about a missing teenager who has a now threat about murdering her. Like, that's the bit that's concerning, right? You should be concerned that the police are thinking that you were capable of doing this. And the biggest issue of concern should not be whether or not she's had sex. That's very weird, Mike. Sheriff Bridges asks Mike if he's a Satan worshipper. And Mike is basically every edgy guy on LiveJournal in 2004 giving you a lecture you didn't ask for about the etymology of the word Satan. Do you know it means opposer? Yeah, I think you're a poser. You're just trying to be a contrarian. You're frankly doing nothing to help change the world of the problems you see. Now, to be fair to Mike Sizzo, the only time I will be fair to him this entire episode, he does make the good point that people who register themselves as Satanists on the census, they're not going around sacrificing animals under the full moon or praying to Satan at an altar with lots of red candles on it. They're mainly just atheists who want to ensure the separation of church and state in the United States, which means stuff like opposing religious structures on public grounds. And it's actually quite funny when the state's like, oh, you know what? We should actually have prayer in school and force kids to pray in school. And then the Satanists are like, absolutely. Yes, we should pray. Right. So we're going to set 5 minutes aside to pray to Christians' God. And then we're going to set another 5 minutes aside to pray to Satan. And then suddenly all those people who were really keen on forcing children to pray in school are like, yeah, no, sorry, we won't do this. It's also really funny when they're like, yes, we like to put a cross in the middle of a public area owned by the local government. And the Satanists are like, cool, I'm bringing my 2-headed goat and my pentagram. Can we hang it from that tree? Is that all right? And then everyone's like, you know what? Maybe we won't have the cross on public land anymore. We'll put it on the church. Yeah, you should. Thank you. Now, despite the fact that someone has been murdered and he's been told this and someone else is missing, they show him a picture of the tree with the pentagram and the skeleton at the bottom. And at that point, he's like, sorry, you understood that this was a murder investigation, right? You understood that they think you killed someone. Why are you like, a dead body? I never thought I would be exposed to this. Cut back to the church, where the girl is asking Gideon more questions about God. Do you think he's vengeful? Do you think he punishes us? And Gideon gives her, it's a speech that I actually quite like, where he talks about reading essays by religious scholars following Hurricane Katrina. He said some religious scholars said America was being punished for immorality, as if New Orleans was like the Sodom and Gomorrah of 21st century United States. But some scholars, particularly a priest from New Orleans, said that the hurricane was proof of God's love because the levees didn't break until after the storm was over. If they had broken sooner, thousands more would have died. And it's quite a good response because you can interpret any situation as being proof of God's vengeance or proof of God's love. It's basically open for interpretation based on your own interpretations of events. So Gideon says the answer really depends on whether you think you've done something that you need to be punished for. The girl finally breaks and says it's her fault that Cherish went missing. And we don't find out why, because it cuts straight back to Morgan and Reed talking to one of the cops on duty. Morgan has decided to again tease Reed about needing sugar in his coffee. And the other officer drives off. And Reed then basically starts shouting at Morgan that he can't believe Morgan would go behind his back and tell Hotch and Gideon about his nightmares. And Morgan does not apologise. He says quite clearly this is something Gideon and Hotch need to be aware of, which is true. They are your supervisors. You are in a high-stress job. Morgan is saying, basically, they need to be aware of the mental health situation of someone who is the youngest agent on the team and has the least experience with the practical aspects of this job. It's not, hey, he's having nightmares, what a loser. It's, he's having nightmares, he might need to have some mental health checkups. Morgan is just looking out for him. And for once, this isn't a toxic masculinity thing. Anyway, Reed continues to lay into Morgan, even when Morgan says you don't need to be worried about losing your job. And Reed is shouting, saying that he trusted Morgan and Morgan betrayed him, which is when Morgan caves and admits that he also used to have nightmares when he first started at the AU. It's a particularly troubling case for Morgan, he said. He was going to give a profile on the case, and he said, hey, I can give you a case as soon as I have more victims. The next day there was a victim, and Morgan felt like he had essentially manifested another young girl dying so that he could do his profile. He didn't tell anyone about the nightmares because he wanted to tough it out, but Gideon knew. Gideon saw him and intervened. And, you know, thank God that Gideon intervened. Thank God that Morgan is now intervening as well. Because if you see shit like this on a daily basis, you really do need to be looking after your mental health. For no reason at all, it seems, Corey turns up at Zizzo's house, like the DOS house. Reed and Morgan are still in the middle of their discussion, but he interrupts them and says, hey, has anyone found Cherish? And one, wouldn't someone have said that already? Like, if someone has found Cherish, a major part of the investigation because she's missing and they fear that she might die, surely if they'd found her, that's the first thing you hear. Like, and also, why are you turning up at the DOS house? Like, get out, kid. Anyway, Corey is incredibly agitated, trying to get them to look in the house, even though they're like, hey, we looked in the house. And then he's like, did you look everywhere? What about the outbuilding? And perhaps they're not actually very good FBI agents, because we're going to Reed just kind of staring blankly at Corey and being like, what outbuilding? Like, sorry, wait, you mean to say that the agents searched the house and then did not search the outbuilding? Imagine if the police were like searching my house to look for a missing girl, and then they were like, oh, there's a garage out there. No point in searching that though. Who would be in a garage? Anyway, Corey, without waiting for the FBI or even just letting Morgan and Reed check it out, starts racing off in the direction of the outbuilding, encouraging them to follow. I mean, they kind of have to at this point. What the fuck's he going to do? Contaminate the crime scene? Back to the church, the girl is telling Gideon about the skeleton under the tree. Apparently, it was a hiker who had fallen off the trail about a year ago, cracked his head, and she says he was a tourist. And I guess that being a tourist means it doesn't matter if you die. Like, I just don't get the logic there. She's like, he was a tourist. All right. He was still dead, though. You still should have told someone.
Somebody should have reported it.
Yeah, like, even if you didn't kill someone, preventing the lawful burial of a body is still a crime, right? But never mind. We're not going to dwell on that now. We simply don't have time. Instead, I want you to focus on the next sentence out of her mouth, which is, we used to go there all the time. We watched him decompose. Just imagine, me and you both have cousins that are teenagers, like late teens. Imagine if your cousin said to you, yeah, we found a dead body in the woods. We didn't tell anyone, like the police or anything. We didn't like try and see if he was okay, see if we could get an ambulance, see if we could at least get the police contact his next of kin. No, instead we decided to watch it slowly decompose over an entire year. Are you fucking kidding me? What? Frankly, Gideon has a level of composure I just do not have, because he just goes, oh, were other people with you watching the body decompose? And she's like, yeah, it was the whole gang, indicating that all the cheerleaders and all the football players came to watch this body decompose. And I don't think I can honestly feel how I would if someone said that to me in real life, because it's such an insane thing to find out. Like, I have so many questions, but I don't think I want to hear the answers to any of them. Why would you do that? If you find a dead body, why aren't you just ringing the police? Even if you were like ringing them immediately to be like, guys, there's a dead body in the woods. Why don't you then ring the police? Even if it's something you're saying where it's like, this is an insane thing, I should tell people. I just can't. If my cousin said that to me, I would honestly hit her. I'd feel like, I'm sorry, you fucking what? Anyway, back to Zizzo, the interrogation room. He is freaking out over the satanic tree with pictures of the blood just underneath, pictures of the body just underneath the blood-written sign. Back to the fucking church, because we don't need to pause on anything. No. The girl is somehow still explaining how they went to watch the body decompose, and actually it was just cool and chill. None of us had ever seen a dead body before.
Yeah, they were definitely high and drunk.
She goes on to say, this is something that became our thing, something that our parents didn't know about. Sorry, what? This is the thing you're doing that your parents don't know about? That you're going to a forest and watching a man's dead body decompose. So if anyone is ever in this situation and they'd like to do something that their parents don't know about, might I suggest sneaking into R-rated horror movies? Sarah, yeah. You might want to tell them, hey, get a fake ID and drink in the park. Yeah. We do not condone underage drinking on this podcast.
Or get a friend who's taller and looks older to go in the shop for you.
For legal reasons, this was a joke.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, you know what I was doing when I was like not 16, but I was 14, and I snuck into a horror movie. And I told my parents, I looked at the times that the films were going to be on, and I told my parents that me and my friends were going to watch the SpongeBob SquarePants movie.
Nice.
And instead we went to see, I don't even know what it was. It had Robert De Niro in it, and whichever horror movie that had him in and came out at the same time as the SpongeBob movie. Anyway, see, that is a normal thing you can do that can be your thing and that your parents don't know about. And is not watching a body decompose. Gideon, again, very calmly explains to this girl that that was still the body of a man when he died. He had a family, he had friends, he had a pet. No one's seen him in over a year. What's that Jezebel headline? I don't know how to tell you how you should care about other people. So back to Zizzo's outbuilding. Corey looks quite thrilled to be like, hey, it's here. The outbuilding looks less like a structure and more like a pile of junk, but Morgan goes into what must be the most rickety building ever, and Corey stays outside with Reed and says, it never used to be like this in McAllister. Reed says, hey, well, you've been reading the profiling books. You know good things don't always happen to good people. There's no rhyme or reason. Morgan is sneaking around with his flashlight and comes across the dead body of Cherish. She's got quite a lot of blood over her, so it seems like it might have been more of a violent death because she had a chance to struggle. And Morgan is horrified because her eyes are open, just like the victims in the strangling case that Morgan mentioned gave him nightmares. Morgan comes outside to tell Reed and to say, hey, you need to go and get the rest of the team. Corey is shouting, "Is she in there? Is she in there?" And the thing is, like, do you notice how he hasn't come out with her, Corey? So that would imply that she was either not there or not capable of moving. So either way, she's not alive right now, coming out to give you a hug and say, "Thank you for finding me." Morgan doesn't answer the question. Cut back to the interrogation room. Zizzo is pleading with the sheriff and the agents, saying, "Hey, we just draw stars upside down and listen to music. We're not killers." And the sheriff's like, "You should confess." And Zizzo is like, "I am not confessing. I didn't do this." And before he can say another word, Gideon barges into the room and asks for a word with all of the police officers and FBI agents that are currently in the room. Come back to outside the outbuilding. Morgan tells Reed, "Go back to the house, find the deputies." And what I find weird is he didn't say, "and take Corey with you so he can get a ride back in the cop car," because civilians shouldn't just be traipsing around crime scenes. But, we know exactly why he didn't. Corey is saying he can't believe she's dead. He only saw her the other day at a pet rally. Back at the police station, Gideon, Elle, Hotch and Bridges are all in Bridges' office. And Gideon is telling the horrific story of the hiker, explaining that all the teenagers knew about the body and did nothing, including Corey. Now, I want you to look at Elle's reaction during this part. She is the only one reacting completely appropriately to this news, because the only appropriate reaction is to go, "Sorry, what the fuck did you just say?" But everyone else is just like, "Oh yeah, they found a body and watched it decompose." You know, normal teen shit. Apparently the only teenagers who didn't know about the decomposing hiker was Zizzo's gang. They were too busy listening to heavy metal to go watch a corpse decompose. It turns out that the teenage girl told Gideon that the pentagram and the wording wasn't there a few months ago when she last went to see the body decompose. This indicates that someone was hoping to throw the police off their scent by disguising it as a Satanist ritual. Cut back to the outbuilding. Morgan is asking Corey about the profiling books and putting on like a little bit of a proud demeanor, like, "Oh, you want to be a profiler, kid? That's great. Study up, work hard, and you'll go far." And now we're going to cut back and forth between the interview between Morgan and Corey and the police station, where Gideon is explaining exactly the type of person that would insert themselves into the investigation. And the sheriff can't quite believe that Gideon is really pointing towards Corey. After all, Corey was right in the room when the picture was discovered to tell us what LOD stood for. And then there's a revolver missing from the gun safe. This isn't going to be good, is it? Despite the fact that Corey is the only person in the series so far who has known what profiling is, Morgan decides to effectively explain it again. So Morgan is talking to Corey, and unlike the rest of his team, when they start baiting an unsub, he's not going, "Hey, you've got a tiny dick." He's like going for a more of a flattering approach, like, "Yeah, well, the person that did this, they're clearly really smart. Yeah." And Reed makes the mistake of going back right at that second to announce that there are no deputies on the scene. And because he's not paying an awful lot of attention, it means Corey has the time to put him in a headlock and effectively use him as a human shield. Good work, Reed. Well done.
All clap for you.
Corey is not calming down, even as Morgan tries to make him, because, he's so pissed about Cherish going out with Adam. Because apparently Cherish was never going to be with him. Corey literally has a gun pointed straight at Spencer, so Morgan drops his gun and tries to negotiate with Corey, while Reed takes the exact opposite track and decides to start quoting Bible scripture. And then Morgan decides, hey, you know what works for everyone else? It's when they start telling the unsubs about how they have a small dick. So he starts to berate Corey, saying he was just a horny kid who really wanted to be Cherish's boyfriend. That makes Corey turn the gun on Morgan, and as soon as he does that, Reed can effectively hit him so that Morgan can tackle them both to the ground. The gun goes off, but luckily it's into the air, and then Morgan punches Corey straight in the face, which was a really funny moment. Then Reed's like, what the hell was that? Morgan thinks Reed wants an explanation as to how Morgan figured out Corey was the killer, and Reed doesn't. He just wants to know why both him and Corey were tackled to the ground. You were in the way, dude. That's what happened. Morgan laughs it off, though. Then we cut to the Jason Gideon quote. Playwright Eugene Ionesco said, ideologies separate us. Dreams and anguish bring us together. On the jet, the entire team looks slightly traumatized, kind of just looking into space. Luckily, Gideon decides to talk to Reed about the nightmares, explaining everyone on the team has had nightmares because of the stuff they see. He then explains that he looks at the photograph of a woman he saved every night before he goes to bed. This helps fight against the nightmares, and then he pulls the photo out of his wallet and gives it to Reed as a sort of good luck charm. Focus on the people you can help and less about the people you couldn't, which I thought was very good. And it's a great lesson to actually be like, hey, you need to look after your mental health. You're in a very high stress job. But yeah, so that was the episode. Took a few turns, didn't it, Sarah?
It did. Well, thanks for that, Emma. And we'll be back with the episode discussion right after the short break.
Welcome back to Looking for a Man in His 30s from the Ryan's podcast. Now we'll move on to the episode discussion. Sarah,
Yes.
Do you want to kick us off with some interesting points?
I shall. So, after a few episodes of no jet scenes, we got the jet scene back.
Yeah!
Except this time, Emma's going to really hate it because it was for a 30-minute flight.
Yeah.
What was the point?
I mean, to be fair, they are solving a murder and not like Kylie Jenner getting a 13-minute flight from one city in California to another so she could have lunch.
True.
I am willing to say it's okay to fly if you're solving crimes.
Yeah. So in the episode, Emma mentioned it in the episode recap. Gideon mentions that to his knowledge, there's never been a proven case about satanic ritual killings in the United States. Well, 6 months after the episode first aired, there was a ritual killing. Gerald Robinson was convicted of murdering Margaret Ann Powell in some sort of ritual. Anyway, so should we get on to the notable guest stars?
Yes, we should do. So Michael Stephen McGrady, who played Sheriff John Bridges, he's notable for playing Saul Solinger on Southland, Frank Barnes on Ray Donovan, and Detective Philip Venata on American Crime Story, The People vs. A.J. Simpson, which I still have not watched. Then we have Aaron Paul, who played Mike Zizzo. He is most known for playing Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
And now, on to our favourite part of the episode, Sarah.
Yeah.
Our pretty boy or baby girl. This is our episode MVP, the person that did the most this episode.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, I saw you write your choice in the thing, and I was like, yep, that's right. So do you want to lead us in?
Yeah. So our pretty boy this episode is, drumroll please, Mr. Morgan. For reasons of he was very caring.
Yeah.
Very supportive. He bullies him now and again, but it was a bit of banter. But he loves him dearly, like a baby brother.
Yeah. He teases Reed, calls him pretty boy, but really he does love Reed, and he is just looking out for him. He's doing the mature thing by saying, actually, you do need to talk to someone about this. You can't just keep having nightmares and just letting this affect you. It's going to cause problems as you try and solve crimes later. You need to address this now. And it's a really kind of lovely scene of like anti-toxic masculinity that was very rare on TV shows in 2005.
And also that punch.
Oh, yeah. I did also like that. You know, it was a couple of episodes back, but when Morgan like kicks in the door and the therapist is just like, who's going to pay for that? Who cares? He's already done it.
Yeah. Oh,
no time to look for the spare key.
Oh, when he punched through that wall.
Yeah.
That was a few episodes back.
Yeah, no, that was. I'm actually not interested in the last episode. No, it was Natural Born Killer. It was episode 8.
So we will be right back with a true crime recap after this short break.
Welcome back to Looking for a Man in His 30s, a Criminal Minds podcast. Now we'll go into our true crime recap. Sarah, it's time to deliver the profile.
Thanks, Emma. So, the unsub from this week's episode, Corey Bridges, appears to have been inspired by a guy called Charles Schmidt, aka the Pied Piper of Tucson. So, the comparison between them both is that they're both murderers who were sons of people who had positions of authority within their local communities. Also, they were both part of social circles where the friends were aware of a hidden corpse that was hidden in an isolated area, and everyone kept the fact a secret.
Sorry, that was real.
Yes. You'll find that more when I explain. But yeah.
Oh. Please go ahead, Sarah.
This group was a bit smaller than the one in the show, but yes, they kept it a secret. Also, they targeted teenage girls and killed at least one victim with a rock, as well as killing witnesses in order to silence them. So, Charles Howard Schmidt Jr. was born on July the 8th, 1942, in Tucson, Arizona. He was born to a single mother who gave him up soon after birth. But the day after he was born, he was adopted by a couple, Charles and Catherine Schmidt, who were the owners and operators of Hillcrest Nursing Home. Growing up, Schmidt had a difficult relationship with his adopted father, whom his mother later divorced. And as he grew older, he attempted to meet with his birth mother, but angrily she rejected him and told him never to come back. When he was at school, he was recognised for his good looks and his strong gymnastic abilities that led his team to the state championships. But academically, he struggled a bit. In his senior year, he quit the gymnastics team, and just before graduating, he was suspended for stealing tools from the school's workshop. So he never went back. He left school soon after that. So with no diploma and job prospects, he moved into a mobile home on his adopted mother's property and was given a new car and a motorcycle, as well as $300 a month allowance. I think I'd get that if I'd been
stealing, and they're like, okay, here's a caravan to live in, here's a car, here's a motorbike, and here's $300 a month.
Yeah.
In the 50s.
Yeah. So his nickname, the Pied Piper of Tucson, came about because he was extremely charismatic and appealed to many people in the teenage community in Tucson. So, as a teenager, he formed a close-knit group of friends that he hung around with at Speedway Boulevard, drinking alcohol, picking girls, the usual. And the gang consisted of himself, his girlfriend, Mary French, John Saunders, Richie Bruns, and his roommate, Paul Graff. Schmidt even changed his appearance in order to emulate his idol at the time, which was Elvis Presley, by stretching his lower lip with a clothespin. He also wore pancake makeup, lip balm, and created an artificial mole on his cheek. And in order to make himself appear taller, he stuffed his cowboy boots with newspapers and flat cans, which in turn left him walking with a strange gait. So he lied to his friends, claiming that he'd sustained an injury in a fight with the mafia. rather than say I've got some shit in your boots.
All right, cool. Well, that's not the worst thing he's done. So we'll leave the pancake makeup and the newspaper stuffed boots. Cool. What a normal thing you've done. Much better than all the rest of the stuff.
No, it gets worse. On May the 31st, 1964, Schmid announced to his friends that he wanted to kill a girl to find out what it was like. Like, not experience that.
Who just fucking announces that?
Yeah, he just announced it.
In the same way you were like, oh, hey, I might try that new place downtown for dinner tomorrow.
Anyway, so he decides on 15-year-old Aline Rowe, as he knew she'd be home alone while a divorced mother worked nights. It is also believed that he chose her as she had previously refused to engage in casual sex with him and other local teens.
Another loss for women. Oh God. You know when they're like, oh, why are you just nice to guys when they ask you out?
No.
Why don't you just, see, because then when you've said no, I don't want to have casual sex with you, they're like, right, well, I'm going to make a plot to kill you.
Hey, do you want to know how he came up with the ruse to kill her?
No.
So, created a ruse with some group members in his group, particularly French and Saunders. Giggles are British. For those who don't know, French and Saunders is a comedic duo in the UK. So he created a ruse where they'd lure Rowe out of her home with promise of a double date. The trio picked her up from her home and they headed out to the desert in Arizona. So when they arrived at the destination, French stayed in the car listening to music while Schmid tied Rowe's arms behind her back. He forced Saunders to remove her bathing suit before sending him away. With Saunders now distracted, Schmid proceeded to rape Rowe, and when Saunders returned, he asked him to do the same, but he couldn't do that. Knowing the plan was then to murder her, Saunders refused to have any part in it and returned to the car to reunite with French. Alone, Schmid bludgeoned Rowe to death with a rope.
You knew the idea was to kidnap this girl and kill her, and now it gets to that. You've stripped this girl naked so that your friend can rape her, and I'm sorry, you're now going, actually, this is a bit too much for me. I'm going to go back to the car.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with you? And also, if it's a bit too much for you, then why didn't you go, actually, I don't think we should kill her, and also I can hit you in the face and we can drive this girl back to town.
So after killing Rowe, Schmid headed back to the car. His girlfriend told her that he loved her, and just to know, after that night, them two ended the relationship. But that's my point. The trio then buried Rowe's body in the sand in the desert. And it gets worse, because a few months later, he met 16-year-old Gretchen Fritz at the local swimming pool. She was the daughter of a wealthy and prominent Tucson heart surgeon and a community leader. Via local gossip, he discovered that she'd been expelled from a private school for her involvement in an attempted armed robbery, which intrigued him a bit. But unbeknown to him, she'd been deemed a pathological liar by her teachers, who recommended that she receive psychiatric treatment. In the bid to woo her, Schmid turned up at her door posing as a pots and pans salesman. She went along with his ruse initially, unaware that his goal was to romance her. When she realised that, the pair began dating. However, Fritz soon became possessive and was frequently hysterical when she found out that he was in the presence of other girls. By the next year, she was calling him 5 to 6 times a day to find a way. Frustrated by behaviour.
She's calling him 5 to 6 times a day. That's on the landline.
Yeah.
This is the 1960s. She's calling his house 6 times a day.
Yeah, big creepy. So frustrated by her behaviour, he began distancing himself. Now, major issue with that is that early in the relationship, He'd shown her where he'd buried Rose's body and confided in her that he was the one who killed her. And she'd also stolen a diary belonging to him that detailed the murder and also the alleged shooting death of a 16-year-old boy. And she used this as leverage and threatened to ruin him if he ever tried to leave her.
You could have just gone to the police with that information, right?
Yeah.
Hey, my boyfriend, at this point, I don't really care if you're even doing it just because he broke up with you. Anything that gets this man put away so that he cannot hurt more people. You know what? If it has to be that you're petty about him dumping you, go on.
So instead of leaving her, what he did was on August 16th, 1965, he strangled her to death along with her 13-year-old sister Wendy. He then told his friend Richard Bruns that he'd murdered the sisters and showed him the bodies, which had been haphazardly buried in the desert. Schmidt then became infatuated with Bruns' girlfriend and started harassing her. Paranoid that he'd kill her, Bruns and his girlfriend fled to Ohio, where her parents and his grandparents lived. While in Ohio, he confessed about Schmidt's crime to his grandparents, who instructed him to inform the police.
Well, good.
Bruns later flew back to Tucson to help with the police investigation. Schmidt was apprehended and charged with the murders of Roe and the Fritz sisters, and in 1966, after a heavily media-focused trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. However, 5 years later, the state of Arizona temporarily abolished capital punishment, so his sentence was commuted to 50 years behind bars at Arizona State Prison. Sadly, due to his legal fees, his adopted mother and her second husband were reduced to poverty and forced to move away from Tucson.
Well, I would also move away from Tucson if my adopted kid had killed 3 teenage girls.
On several occasions while in prison, he attempted to escape, finally succeeding on November 11th, 1972, along with fellow inmate Raymond Hutchins. The pair then it gets worse. The pair held 4 hostages on a ranch near Tempe, but were soon arrested and sent back.
Okay. And that's where it ends? He died behind bars?
He did, but not in a way that you'd think. So on March 20th, 1975, he was stabbed 47 times by inmates Jimmy Ferrer and Dennis Eversole. After losing an eye and a kidney in the attack, he died from his injuries 10 days later. The men who attacked him pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, and their initial sentences were increased. Whilst in the morgue, though, his body was briefly stolen, but later recovered by police.
Was it put in the desert for some teenagers to come and stare at?
He was then given a Catholic funeral at prison and buried in the cemetery of the prison. And at the behest of his adopted mother, he believed that if he'd been buried in a public cemetery, his tombstone would have been defaced.
Bury him in an unmarked grave, then?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, at that point, I would have just been like, hey, I'm not going to pay you any money to bury him. You can do whatever you like. I'm out.
Yeah. So as his, if you want to know about his MO,
go on.
Targeted Caucasian teenage girls that he knew. First, in order to rape them and then murder them to silence the testimonies. His methods of killing varied because Aline was bludgeoned while the Fritz sisters were strangled. Mm-hmm. But all victims were then buried in isolated areas in the Arizona desert.
Right. So, cleanse our palates with What Would Penelope Garcia Do? This is our segment where we link people with resources that can help them, link them to a cause that needs attention, perhaps charity, perhaps a petition. This week, we've chosen to highlight support for people affected by cults or extremist groups. It's tangentially related to the episode because there's not a helpline for people that are weirded out by guys in their class. Sarah, do you want to start us off with the UK?
I will do, yes. So the Family Survival Trust is a charity whose mission is to prevent and to provide information on coercive control, cultic behaviour, and psychological manipulation. The charity's numerous volunteers are from diverse backgrounds, many of whom have had personal experiences with cults themselves, know family or friends who've been in cults, or have come across victims in their professions. The charity hosts monthly Zoom calls on the third Tuesday of each month for those affected by cults and extremist or exploitative groups. For those interested in joining meetings, the email is supportgroup@thefamilysurvivaltrust.org. There's another charity which is Humanists UK, and through their To Faithless programme, they have a helpline available for people who've left or wish to leave high control religions or cults and need support to get their lives back on track. The helpline number is 0800 448 0748. Lines are open 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. on Wednesdays, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. on Thursdays, and 8 a.m. till 11 a.m. on Fridays. Calls to this number are free from all UK mobiles and landlines and will not appear on itemised bills. You can also email them at helpline@tofaithless.com for support and advice. And on to Emma for USA.
I wanted to highlight the Safe Passage Foundation, which is co-founded by second-generation members of restrictive, isolated, or high-demand communities that are colloquially referred to as cults. The Safe Passage Foundation provides resources, support, and advocacy for people raised in cults, even going so far as to offer financial aid and scholarships, because the children who are born into cults, specifically on their site, they mention the children of God, they are often restricted from getting a full education. And so this is the financial aids and scholarships is specifically to address that part of it. I also wanted to highlight the Family Survival Trust. Their mission is to prevent and provide information on coercive control, cultic behaviour, and psychological manipulation. They support those affected by groups that use those techniques, which are cults, and educate regarding the risks these groups pose to individuals and society, and seek appropriate controls on the group's activities. They offer support groups, whether you have been the victim of a cult or whether one of your family members have been essentially brought into the cult. So I thought that those two were very important to highlight, and the websites are safepassagefoundation.org and thefamilysurvivaltrust.org, but we'll have both links, all of our links, in the show notes.
And that's all for this week. We'll come back next week when we'll be talking about Criminal Minds, Season 1, Episode 11, Blood Hungry.
While you're waiting for the next episode, why not follow us on social media? We're on Instagram at Looking for a Man in His 30s Pod, Tumblr at Looking for a Man in His 30s Pod, or you can email us at lookingformanhinhis30s@gmail.com. All 3 times, 30s is spelled out. Don't put 30 or you might get one of those bots that Instagram clearly thinks we are.
And you can also rate and review us on whichever platform that you're using to listen to podcasts. It really helps more than you know.
Until next time.
This case is closed.